Hello, welcome back to Loki's Librarian. If you are new here, welcome. I am your librarian, Katrina, and on Sundays I do a thing called Books and Booze, where I review a book and mix up a cocktail. This month we're taking a look at true crime. Last week it was the wrongfully accused with the Amanda Knox story waiting to be heard. This week we're looking at a crime most people would see as completely justified, making this week's book Why, Gary, the Jody Plauche story by Jody Plauche. The accompanying cocktail was a little trickier. I actually found one called a Justified, but after reading the book, I went with a Poetic Justice instead, which is 1.5 ounces of Reposado Tequila, 1.5 ounces of Reposado Tequila, 2 ounces of Grapefruit Juice, 1 ounce of lime juice, a 1/2 ounce of Agave Nectar, and 1 egg white. So let's do this. The story itself is pretty basic, and it's pretty well known. I mean, it's quite infamous, and it's every now and then gains more traction on the internet. I feel like the video clip has been viewed on YouTube like 20 million times or something. Jody Plauche was a 12-year-old boy who was molested and kidnapped by his karate teacher, Jeff Doucette. And when Doucette was returned to Baton Rouge, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, to stand trial, he was met at the airport by Jody's father, Gary Plauche, who put a bullet in his head live on national television. Not two shits were given by Gary, and I think most people would stand up and applaud him for that. I mean, most people except for those who feel like minor attracted person is a valid class. It's not, but that's not the point of this book. So no one knew what Gary was planning to do, obviously, or they would have cut the cameras, but this became, I think, the first, if not the absolute first. It was one of the first live televised executions, and the police escort famously asked, "Why, Gary? Gary, why?" Now, everyone who knows this basic story knows why, right? The question wasn't, why would you shoot Duquette? That it was, I mean, obvious, right? That's self-evident. The question he was asking is, why would you risk going to prison yourself when we already had the man in custody and dead to rights? I mean, there was no way in hell Duquette was going to be walking out a free man. He was going to do jail time, absolutely 100% unquestioning. I did go with fresh grapefruit juice because I don't want to waste a whole bunch of money and, grapefruit juice, buying an enormous bottle when all I need is, what I say, 2 ounces? 2 ounces. So this is going to take me a minute to get this squished into here. Gary was immediately placed under arrest for murder in the second degree, which was a kindness. They could have easily charged him with murder in the first, but they didn't. They went with the crime of passion one, which, fair, all right, fair. His kid had been kidnapped and extremely harmed by this man. Unless you're one of those weirdos who thinks minor attracted person is a valid thing, everybody understands and supports that yes, this is fair. My God, I should have grabbed a bigger plate. How much lime juice? 1 ounce. And after he initially hired a family friend to represent him, but the family friend was trying to up the market potential of the story by doing a big trial. And Gary eventually took advice from, I think, a counselor, a therapist or something, and got a better lawyer who got him to plead no contest to manslaughter. And the judge, who was well aware that if this had gone to trial, this is messy. This is why I usually do bottled stuff, because it's not messy to make, use bottled juices, but I just didn't want to buy a whole gallon that I was never going to drink. Should have grabbed a towel to dry my damn hands off with. Jesus. Oh my God. This is a messy one. This is why I do juices. It's just yeah, wow. Anyways, where was I? Oh, I was talking about the manslaughter trial. So the judge was well aware that if this had gone to trial, it would have been an expensive waste of time, right? I mean, millions of dollars to try a man that no jury anywhere was going to convict. Children are special. They should be protected. And he did what any parent would love to do. And a good many non-parents would love to do, because fuck child molesters. I got nothing to add to that. I'm just going to let that one hang there while I do the agave syrup. Oh, egg white. Let's just compound the mess here. All right, so while the egg white drips its way off here. So the judge gave Plauche 5 years supervised probation and 300 hours of community service. Other than his initial arrest, he did not see the inside of jail. And that's the summary of the Jody Plauche story. right? I mean, that's it in a nutshell. He had a very traumatic year. I mean, it's nobody's going to say it's not traumatic, but he himself says this was 1 year of my life. This does not define me. This is not who I am. I'm not a victim. I survived this, and this is how. So that's the short story. Jody, the way that they tell his story, the way he told his story, good times, good times. This is the messiest cocktail I've made in a long time. So that's the short version. The way that Jody told his story, and is kind of why I went with the poetic justice instead of the justified. I mean, he went into detail on how grooming works. And it worked because Duquette didn't just target Jody. He targeted the whole family. He befriended both of Jody's parents so that they would trust him and let him be alone with their kids. Multiple kids. As far as I know, Jody's the only one that he molested. But still, he was the cool friend, the cool uncle, if you will. Not a blood-related uncle, but, you know, you have the friends who call their kid, your friend, they're not related, but they're like, oh, that's my aunt, that's my uncle. And even though there's no blood relation because the family is so close. Let me shake this up. So he befriends the whole family, right? And they're friends, and Jody's brothers. I mean, Jody was the ultimate target, but the whole family believed that he was just this great guy who loved kids, ostensibly because Duquette couldn't have any of his own. That's what he told the family. I just love kids, but I can't have any of my own. So this is why I hang out with them as much as I do, is because I can't have any of my own. So I have to, you know, befriend my friends' kids. And they just thought he was a great guy. And it wasn't one-on-one karate coaching, right? He coached the whole community of kids. There was a whole class of them. So a lot of the families loved him. And Jody's parents were having problems because Gary drank a lot. At the time, he was a hardcore alcoholic. And he would quit for a time after this, but he eventually started drinking again. And that's yes, what ultimately contributed to his passing. At the time of the kidnapping, they were actually separated, and rumors circulated that Duquette may be seeing Jody's mom, and it's possible that Duquette was feeding those rumors. Not everyone around Jody was enamored of Duquette, and Jody's uncle, I think it was his Uncle Jeff, maybe, one of his uncles called red flags on Duquette. I mean, the karate team was in Texas for a tournament, and they stopped and visited Jody's uncle. And his uncle's like, dude, there's something not right with this guy. The way this guy is acting around your kids, especially Jody, there's something not right. And at this point, he was good friends of the family, right? They saw him virtually every day, and Jody's parents vouched for him and said, oh, that's just Jeff. There's nothing to be worried about. And the molestation continued. So, that's okay. That's not bad. The grapefruit's the overwhelming profile, which you would expect, right? It's 2 ounces of grapefruit. So the tequila is just very, very barely there in the background. The agave syrup sweetens it up. That's not bad. And then part of the problem, part of the challenge that Jody was facing during all of this is that he did love Duquette. It wasn't just, this random guy pulled me into his van and used me again and again and again. I mean, Duquette built up trust with Jody, all right? And he slowly tested the waters before just jumping right into the rape. No, Jody didn't love him like that. I mean, it wasn't like the minor attracted persons like to fantasize about where they're going to blossom into young love. It was rape and molestation. But he thought Jody, or Jeff, oh my God, all the J's, it's screwing me up. He thought Duquette was a cool uncle, right? He was the uncle that took them to water parks and that watched movies with them, movies that their parents might not necessarily approve of, but hey, it's the cool uncle. I mean, Jody hated the 30 minutes a day he had to put up with that. And yes, that included anal penetration and oral copulation. And he didn't pull any punches when reading about the sexual assaults, and it's not comfortable. It shouldn't be comfortable, right? It should be absolutely miserable and squirming and heartbreaking to read through because it's an awful thing to read about, no matter who the victim is. And yes, this concept of rape is bad, extends to include inmates, even for Jody. He's not somebody who's like, oh, well, that's a child molester, he should be raped in prison. That's a rapist, he should be raped in prison. Rape is awful. Or no matter where no matter if you've been a victim or not, you should recognize that this is something that's horrible and awful. Prison rape is a thing. It should not be, but it is. Child molestation is a thing. It should not be, but it is. Rapists exist. Shouldn't, but they do. Entire history of mankind is filled with this. I mean, look at Genghis Khan. You think that 12% of China's population has direct ancestry to Genghis Khan? You think those were all through consensual contact? And after explaining the horrors of what happened to him and how it came to be, Jody explains why he came out of the whole ordeal whole. All right. And it comes down to his parents. Now, at first, he was angry with his father because, again, he loved Duquette, right? Again, not like that, but Duquette was his friend as far as he knew. He at 12 wasn't able to process and see everything clearly like he did in later years, right? So at first he was mad, although that did eventually pass, and they rebuilt a very good relationship together. But as he processed everything, he did come to forgive his dad. Now, but mostly it was his mom that helped him to come out of this hole. I mean, she never reacted in his presence. All right, she had her feels. God, of course she did. But she would cry alone in her bedroom at night when the kids were asleep. Never in front of Jody. She let him react. She let him have all the feels. But her own reactions took a back seat. They were not important to him. All right, if she's wailing and gnashing her teeth and sobbing about, oh my God, my poor baby, then he knows something truly awful happened. He's aware something truly awful happened because it happened to him. But she lets him process it on his time and has her reactions where he can't see them. And Jody points out how that is the key to helping anyone overcome trauma. And I was reminded frequently throughout this book, like many times, of how spot on Abigail Schreier's latest book, Bad Therapy, is. And resilience truly is the human default state. All right? We know this because 12% of China's population is descended from Genghis Khan, and they didn't all just off themselves when they were, raped way back 2000, or when was he, 1200? 800 years ago. Okay, resilience is the default state. I mean, unless you're told by somebody you trust that it's not, all right? If his mom is freaking out and crying in front of him and coddling him and, oh my God, my poor baby, and never letting him out of sight again, then he becomes scared instead of able to bounce out of it. And because his mom allowed him that space to process without putting her own trauma to the forefront, she sounds like a remarkable woman. Oh no, I have more in here. Okay. So Jody went on to letter in, I think he said 4 sports in high school. All right. He went to college. He became a trauma response counselor for survivors of sexual assault in Pennsylvania. He wanted to go somewhere where, like, his story wasn't necessarily known, but he did use his story to get the job, which is fair, right? I mean, you got to use your life experiences to get you where you want to go. But he's used his voice to do what he can to make sure rape doesn't happen and to help those who have been raped come out as whole as they possibly can. He provides detailed guidance on how to spot if your child may be being abused and how to handle it if you think they might be. And hint, do not say you'd kill anyone who hurt them. And it may be as true for you as it was for Gary, but saying such a thing in front of your kid actually discourages them from talking to you. It doesn't make them feel safe. It makes them worried that if they say anything, their parent is the one who could end up in prison for murder, rather than the person who's hurting them. Additionally, remember earlier when I said that Jody loved Jeff? That's a confusing feeling to have wrapped up with the awful, especially for a child. And you're basically telling them that you'll kill somebody that they love and go to prison. Don't put that on your kid. Be a person that your child can come talk to openly without judgment. He provides a lot of things to look for, like big thing to be careful of if you're a single mom is putting that on the internet because, well, you're making your kids a target, basically, for anybody who, all they got to do is pretend they like adult women and really they're there to groom your children. So putting that you're a single mom on the internet is dangerous. Now, he's not saying that all adult males are bad and they're going to rape your kids, because that's provably false. But be cautious, all right? If you're dating somebody and they want to spend more time with your kids than they want to spend with you, that's a big red flag, all right? It's not cool that they want to, mesh your families. It's a warning sign. There's a lot of other ones in there. I especially liked he had a whole section where he was where he addresses like several myths around rape and why they happen. Just because I liked how he addressed it, especially the no means no. The reason he doesn't like that is because that puts the onus on the victim to affirmatively say no. Well, he was 12. All right. It's not like he was really capable of saying no. He wasn't quite sure what was going on. And there was one time when they were, at a karate tournament and they're in a hotel room, and his dad was there, but the kids had to split up, so they had some kids in bed with with the dad and some kids in bed with Jeff, or yes, I got it right, with Jeff. And Jody ended up being in bed with Jeff, and Jeff spent all night rubbing on him, and he just pretended to be asleep because he didn't know what the hell was going on. He didn't know that he could say no, because Jeff's a family friend. He's the cool uncle. He's the karate coach. He's put himself in this position of authority, and a 12-year-old child doesn't know they can say no. So no means no is, to him, absolutely ridiculous. He thinks that it should be an affirmative yes. Yes means yes. All right? Anything short of an absolute yes, assume is a no. I'm down with that. That's good. He's got the, look what she was wearing, look how much she had to drink, and all these ridiculous things. I think the only thing he didn't put in here, which I'm like, he talks about prostitutes can be raped, so can spouses. Spousal rape is a thing. It's actually been acknowledged to be a thing. Every person who is raped should be crying hysterically. That's provably false also, because people react differently to trauma. We learned that last week when we were reading Amanda Knox's story. She wasn't reacting the way the Italian police thought that she should, and so they assumed she was guilty. And that started her. She had been gnashing her teeth and ripping her hair out and, pounding herself on the breast, and they would have been like, oh, well, she must be innocent. People process trauma differently. Some people do cry, some people completely withdraw. All right? And there's no right or wrong way to process trauma. Because it's happening to you, you don't know how you're going to react until it happens. He didn't address the absolute ridiculous belief that if you enjoy it, it's not rape. That's, again, provably false. All right, because, again, that gets wrapped up with the confusion. Of course I think fairly recently, like within the last 20 years, there was some ridiculous claim where, if you get pregnant from rape, it's because you must have enjoyed it and had an orgasm, because you can't get pregnant unless you have an orgasm. Like, this was a belief, like, within the last 20 years, I heard some lawmaker somewhere throw out. I feel like it was somewhere in Virginia, but I could be wrong on that. And I was like, are you fucking nuts? So, there's a lot of bizarre beliefs out there about what does and doesn't make it rape. And ultimately, what makes it rape is if she doesn't say, he or she does not affirmatively say yes. Then you're just come back. And if your kid is a victim, don't wail and gnash your teeth. And act like it's the worst thing that could ever happen to them. Of course it's awful. And it may be the worst thing that ever happens to them. But resilience truly is the default setting for humans, and especially for the tiny humans. And I'm not saying act like nothing happened, right? That's funny in this cartoon, right? Not so funny when your kid is facing serious trauma. But they have to go through it. You can't go through it for them. And telling them how they should be reacting sets them up for a lifetime of panic and fear rather than resilience. This book was excellent. It was well written, it was engaging, it was horrifying, but not without notice. He actually gives you a trigger warning, says, hey, from here it's going to get real, you're not going to like it if you don't want to know the details. And he spells it out in detail, so you have a chance to brace for it a bit. And mostly it creates a solid pathway for what to look for and how to bounce back if you find yourself that you've been a victim of assault. And you're not this thing. This is a thing that happened to you. Reframing it so that you know that you are a survivor rather than a victim will help you to see yourself as such. And that's it for this week. If you liked what you saw, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next Sunday. Bye.